Chandra Kampani is a chartered landscape architect and a chartered environment with 25 years of experience as the Director Environment and Landscape of the Urban Development Authority. She is leading, motivating and guiding a team of landscape architects and environment planners in environment and landscape planning, landscape project implementations and environment and landscape management. Also attended as a visiting lecturer in the Faculty of Architecture, University of Morocco, disseminating her experience to younger generation. She is also steering committee member in many national committees in the field of environment and landscape architecture, offering strong communication skills with the ability of collaborate and lead as a dynamic and dedicated professional, striving towards environment sustainability and infrastructure planning. Over to you, Ms. Chandra.
Good evening to you all. Thank you very much, Chandra, for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting UDA for this 10-minute forum. So I will be talking a lot on the data and global data or the Sri Lankan data on climate change, because Dr. Malvika has touched all the horizons of the topic. So I will be more talking on how the injuries are prevented through planning. So what are the planning initiatives already in the country, and what can be done and what should be done. So my topic is urban planning and infrastructure design to mitigate injuries related to climate change. So as we heard, climate change is a global phenomenon that largely impacts urban life. We know that it causes, with high temperature sea level rise, increased floods, droughts and storms, and thereby causing injuries and spread of diseases. Being a developing island nation of 61,610 square kilometers, subject to tropical climate patterns, Sri Lanka is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. And the impacts are the extreme weather events such as high intensity rainfall followed by flash floods and landslides, and extended dry periods or other droughts, resulting in water scarcity, are now becoming common occurrences in Sri Lanka. Because we know in our day-to-day life, the wet periods are more wetter and the rainfall is more intense and the dry periods are so stronger. So these are some of the glimpses of the Sri Lankan situation. I will be talking about it more since the time is limited. And so when we talk about the cities are in the front line of the growing physical risk associated with climate change. So they are the home of more than half of the world's people, and by 2050 aggravating that figure is projected to rise to 68%. So the metropolises such as cities are disproportionately located along coasts and rivers, and therefore faces substantial risk posed by hydrometeorological shocks and stressors, which again come to injuries and the diseases. With rapid unplanned growth and city migration, you know the cities have become magnets for the population, seeking better jobs and seeking better education. So it has intensified the population growth in cities. So on the rise, our urban areas retain high socio-economic vulnerabilities. Our cities are prone to urban poverty. Informal settlements have been created in most of our sensitive areas, and lack of municipal services have been generated, so which are aggravated by the exposure to climate-related shocks and stresses. Because we know by experience that when a calamity of climate change comes to a city, the first to be affected are the people who are in poverty, and the settlements, which are we call as informal settlements in our river banks and the water courses. So this has given rise to a growing interest in the concept of urban climate change resilience, which recognizes the complexity of rapid urbanization and uncertainties associated with the climate change. So if I show you in a nutshell what I have been talking about, we have climate change in one aspect, and we have warming temperatures and which causes sea level rise, then increases the number of extreme weather events such as floods, droughts and storms in cities. And as a result, there are immediate property damages, then long-term property damages. Then you have loss of critical infrastructure, you can see the roads and the waterways damaged. And it changes the air quality and deposited sediments and silts due to earth slips and floods. So all these cause serious injuries and infections or rather death. So I will be talking lengthy about this. This is not my subject. Deaths or serious injury and infections, you know what they are. So these are some of the paper articles which shows what have been our problems in Sri Lanka. So heavy traffic due to flooding, then record rains, floods in Sri Lanka, leaving so many families homeless, and the toppling of trees and so on and so forth. So I will quickly go through this data. I have not elaborated so many data, but we know where we are. We should know where we are. So in the climate vulnerability index, we are in the 124th position, and share of global greenhouse gas emissions, we are 0.08. So Sri Lanka has been very ambitious, and we aim to achieve a 14.5% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, reaching 70% renewable power generation, 32% forest cover, and phase out coal by 2042, and net zero emissions by 2050. I am trying to come into the planning aspect of why we should plan in the context of our ambition scales. So Sri Lanka is similar to many countries in the world in placing adaptation at the heart of its national climatic pledges and creating stronger links with policy and planning procedures, including national adaptive plans, which Dr. Nagakanti was talking about. So we have a lot of policies and plans in place in Sri Lanka. For some of them are National Climate Change Policy, which was created by Ministry of Environment. Then we have the very important National Physical Plan by the National Physical Planning Department. And we have the Urban Development Authority Plan, which is done by the UDA. So if I will quickly go to what the National Physical Plan is. National Physical Plan is regarded as the development framework derived out of National Physical Planning Policy. So it is for the whole country and shall be implemented and enforced through detailed regional plans. So coming down from that, the local area development plans are prepared by the Urban Development Authority, where I work, as per the provisions of the relevant law and the development. So let me ask a question. Can we reduce the hazards to humans by climate change through proper urban planning and infrastructure design? Yes, we can. But it needs the technical knowledge, the scientific know-how, and also very important local knowledge or the citizen sciences we were talking about. And it also needs urban analysis through particularly understanding how the city works and examining the current status and the future trends such as population growth and economic development. And also we should assess the risk analysis from the climate change, particular projections of direct and indirect climate impacts, and also the vulnerability analysis, particularly of the urban population that faces high exposure risk to climate change impacts and has limited coping capacity to withstand these impacts. So what we is addressing climate change should begin in our cities. Since we were talking about urban agglomerations and most of the people are congested in cities now. So utilizing urban planning as an entry point for enhancing climate change resilience in cities draws on existing planning processes and technical capacity and resources utilization. So forward-looking urban planning tools such as land use planning and development planning allows us to adopt integrated, inclusive and reflective approaches and provide a comprehensive and sustainable route to enhancing climate change resilience. So the actions include adopting climate risk sensitive spatial growth policies for the cities, limiting development in high-risk areas through the use of development control instruments, and reducing physical vulnerability of assets by strict enforcement of building control. So what I'm talking about is how the injuries are controlled when climate change happens. How can we deviate from those resultant things with a proper urban plan for our cities? So urban planning can help to reduce or limit of exposure and vulnerability to the effects of climate change, thereby controlling the happening of injuries and diseases. The spatial nature of land use plans allows the demonstration of the locational constraints posed by climate change on existing and future developments of a city, and guides the adaptation of climate-sensitive spatial growth policies. For example, the land use policy can identify the environment resources and sensitive areas such as wetlands, sand dunes, and coastal vegetation, and adopt the relevant development control measures where to withstand these sensitive areas. So what the urban planning solutions and UDA, the Urban Development Authority, taken to reduce the hazards to humans by climate change. So the Urban Development Authority is the apex body of local planning. Coming under the umbrella of National Physical Plan, we prepare the urban development plans for the declared cities under UDA law. This document is considered as the legal framework governing the development in a city for a 10-year duration to make cities livable, resilient and also sustainable. That is the main focus of a development plan for a city. And what it contains is a geographically referenced spatial information platform developed to showcase how the exposure and vulnerability of people and assets will interact with current and future climate-related shocks and stresses. We are not talking only on current stresses and the shocks, but we are forecasting the population to a 10-year period and also forecasting the multi-hazards the city can be prone, and also how to deviate from it with the urban planning scenarios. So data on vulnerability, environmental footprints are evaluated before a plan is prepared, and a lot of brainstorming sessions with the community and with the professionals engaged in the specific city is done, and it takes about so many months for us to evaluate all these data and concise it into a planning document, which is again kept for 60 days for public evaluation and comments, and after taking the political and the local authority consensus, it is gazetted as a document, which is the umbrella document which houses the total development in a city for that 10-year period. So, what I have told already, I think, the urban development plan prepared for cities established the planning guidelines. It also contains the guidelines for the development, the policies, and the way we plan the physical layout and land use. It aims to provide a comprehensive and longer-term approach to development and guide the spatial, social, economic, and cultural development of the city. So if I may show you a small plan here, a key component of proposed land use planning is zoning. You have a zoning map prepared for a city. This is an example of a candy city. So we have made, you can see different color tones in that plan, which shows different areas like the residential, the commercial, the sensitive areas. Likewise, it goes on after the data collection and evaluation. This zonation map can be an effective tool to regulate urban development in locations that are at risk from climate-related shocks and stresses. Each zone carries a specific regulation and a specific development based data set. So if you start any development in those areas or rather the zonations, you have a specific guidance of regulatory framework attached to that zone. So zoning can restrict development in high risk and environmentally sensitive areas. I think that is the most important thing when we talk about the climate change, and can introduce measures to support development in a risk sensitive manner, which will in turn reduce the disaster injuries also and the diseases. So under the scope of a development plan, I am going inside to a development plan and talking about a development plan because to show you what it is. There is a special chapter called Sustainable Environment Strategies, mainly focused on formulating a sustainable and resilient city. Actually, this part is the main responsibility of my division in all these development plans for all the cities in Sri Lanka. So it carries different areas. One of it is Public Outdoor Recreation Space Plan, which talks on network of open spaces, how we mark the open spaces which are existing in the city, and then where the communities are located, and the walkability criteria. Actually, it's a hierarchy of park systems and the community linkages with the park connector network. Then we have the conservation plan, which we identify all the wetlands and the low-lying areas and put the zonations and attach regulations for development or otherwise use. Then we have the very important DRR plan, Disaster Risk Reduction Plan, where we go back to the disseminated data we were talking about, and also the National Building Research Organization specifications and guidance. And also we do the disaster, accordingly we do the disaster vulnerability assessment of a city. And then accordingly the zoning and guidelines are made, which will govern the development and the sensitivity of that area. And lastly, we have the landscape master plan, which covers all the green infrastructure network which is already existing in the city and also the proposed ones, and the park systems and streetscapes and the blue-green networks, which are very important for a sustainable city. So all these data and the plans and the specifications are inbuilt into a development plan for a city. So I will give some of the examples. This shows under the sustainable environmental strategy. One of the cases are disaster risk reduction plan. So this is a plan which was done for Kandy. So it shows the landslides and unstable slopes, and you can see from the table that we have a specific zone-specific guidelines where you show if the slope angle is 0 to 10, the plot sizes are set, and the plot coverage is also mentioned. And if the slope angle is more than 45 degrees, we are not allowing any development because there are acute angles of slope, and natural vegetation or bioengineering is the regulation. So we tie up with also with the NBRO guidelines since they are the mandated landslide mitigation agency. This is about a flash flood area. So you can see that I won't go one by one since the time is restricted. It is talking about drainage improvements and be secured from injuries, secured from the disasters, and adapt to the futuristic disasters. So, and also we are talking about wind as well, and we are talking about green infrastructure, how we can provide green barriers, and how the slopes are also made in a sustainable way. Then I am going to talk quickly about city infrastructure. So you can see from these pictures when a climate change effect comes, rather like a flash flood or as a storm, you can see the trees topple down, and since we don't have infrastructures, the urban drainage systems, all the roads get flooded and people are in difficulty. And also these vehicular injuries, people in vehicle who are prone to injuries, and also the toppling of trees again and the floods, which are linked to your subject area today, the theme, injuries and the diseases. So these are some of the guide plans we prepare, attached to the development plans, guide plans where the tree can be sustainably planted, how it is supported, and how the services could tie up with the cityscapes. So all these things are in our guidelines and specifications. And what Dr. Malakantri was also saying, the infrastructure design with nature-based solutions. It is in vogue now, since it is cost effective, and a lot of the other benefits are tied up with these networks. So the nature-based solutions are blue-green networks, river catchment management, and sustainable urban drainage solutions, which are coming as the most attractive actions because of their impact on reducing risk and their economic feasibility in promoting safer cities for the people. So the nature-based solutions protect, manage, and restore ecosystems, provide benefits in areas of decarbonization, heat reduction, which will ultimately prevent the climate change happening, and pollution and flood control. Apart from that, this point is very important. They also improve biodiversity. They enrich the biodiversity by park connectors and green connectors, and also improve the city's beautification. And also lastly, the wetlands for wise use, which we have touched up in UDA as well as with the stakeholder agencies. So in that we restore the wetland ecosystems, introducing wise use activities, because wetlands are taught as wastelands. So we have given new meaning to the wetlands and improving the urban flood management, then green growth, and also contribute to stress reduction. So the blue-green networks, blue indicates water bodies such as rivers and tanks and the water courses, and green indicates the trees, parks and gardens, and these pictures show how they can be connected in urban situation. Then these are the streetscapes. We are talking about vertical green and reducing carbon footprints and promoting biodiversity corridors. So the sustainable urban drainage systems, and lastly the Veladana Wetland Park, which has been done by the UDA and which has introduced a new meaning to the city with urban recreation and the wise use of the wetland parks. So we have added the wetland restoration, education and nature-based recreation, which also ties up with the health professions in reducing the risk of disasters, not only reducing the risk of disasters, but also the stressors and in the urban community. So lastly, what I strongly believe is the coherence and synergistic approach of all professionals like us today. We all are doing a planning exercise. You all are doing planning for good health for the population. We do planning for cities, for the people to survive and making sustainable cities. So we should not work in silos, but work as communities, as groups, establishing foundations for a more inclusive, sustainable future, and it is needed at this juncture to adapt, mitigate, and climate change impacts. So thank you very much for the opportunity.